Eric Burgess here with Music Marketing TV, and today we're going to be remixing Jingle Bells. So get your Christmas hat, your holiday hat ready, and let's get into this. So first things first, I adjusted the theme because Christmas songs also have this ability to sound kind of mysterious. So I wanted to emphasize that a bit more. So I adjusted the theme. So Jingle Bells, here goes jingle bells, jingle all the way. So it's a bit different. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. And that's what I have the main line doing instead of the traditional super happy major version. Very, very cool. So that's the theme I was going to work with, and I picked my chords. And let me just show you our final product. Then we're going to go over some overlaying features that you could take away and apply in your productions to do similar remixes or even create some original stuff. So here it is. Pretty cool. I really like the vibe that I got out of it. So let's talk about how to make something similar. So by far, the most important decision stylistically was the chords and how I chose to do the chords. So let's jump in here and look at the first pattern. So the first pattern is we get introduced to our theme, and I'm going to just remove that for the moment. And I have this Harmor. This Harmor's a pad. And the only reason you can hear these high notes, because if we look on here, we have this filter and it's a low pass filter. So we still hear high frequencies when I play through it. If we just play it, it's because the width is so high. If I actually reduce this, we don't hear anything. So this is a really, really fundamental. So all filters are not made equal. And I actually tried out the different low passes because in this case, they make quite a big difference. And I settled on the crude low pass. And what it does is it leaks some high stuff, but it creates this nice bed for us to sit in. And it's not overly bright. It's just enough. So that's what I went with. And we have this motion, which for the first part is slow. 2 swells, basically a measure. We're over here, we speed up quite a bit and we're doing 4. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So things get moving over there. And that is this sound. So basically, and it's mostly a square wave. We've got some unison and a little bit of soft saturation with some reverb. That's all like after touches stuff, you know, not a big deal with that kind of a thing. Just dressing it up a little bit. The main idea is this filter moving up and down with a width that is a bit leaky to allow some high stuff through. We get this really nice, delicate sound. And let's go ahead, let's take a look at the chords. So the chords over here, I picked these first, and voice leading is really important. Now, if you don't know what voice leading is, it's the way one chord goes to the next chord. So for example, if I play a C minor chord, let's play lower, and I want to go to a G minor chord, here's C minor to G minor. That's one way I could do it. Or I could go. That's a very different way to go there. So different voice leading principles will come into play. So here, I've got my chords up here. We're on an A flat minor, and I'm walking down very clearly with the bass. And at the end, I pull one of these things where you go for a E flat suspended, and then we resolve. That is what's going on here. That's, I love that stuff. That's the best kind of chord stuff to do. So, and the E flat, and we're in the key of C or A flat minor. So when we jump to that's a call from to the 5th. That's the 5th of the scale. So if we go for A flat, and we go up, E flat, that is the 5th. And so we have a 5-1. So we've got a really nice looping progression which is what I was going for. Then all we had to do is figure out what notes were appropriate for the theme. And so I came in here and wrote out the theme in this new sort of scale. And there are two sides to the theme. The first one is an M power synth by Melda Productions. They've got this wonderful bell sound. I was hunting for bell sounds. And that was pretty Christmassy, so I was like, this will work. And it's very, very soft. And I believe in the mixer, did I ever send this to a channel? No, I didn't. So that's just it. It's just as it is. And I reduced the volume on the part. So you'll notice here it's much softer. Now, the other thing you're hearing is a Diva on the default patch. I really like the default patch. It's pretty straightforward. You just load it up and away you go. I think it may have fiddled with the decay for a second, but I largely left it where it was. And they have a beautiful plate reverb. So I was like, we are ready to roll. Took that and wrote the notes on this. I had to go quite a bit higher, actually. We could, of course, adjust the oscillator inside of Diva, but this works just fine. And it is very dynamically responsive. So if we play soft versus loud, it'll open the filter a ton more. And so for that reason, this is a super expressive sound. So I have it playing softer here, but later on I can have the same notes, but open it up and it becomes a lot more just grand. And so with those sounds, I wrote in the theme, and putting it all together, I reached this conclusion. All right, so we come in, we enter our next section. Important thing to do is the chords are actually the same here, but I am voice leading them down. You see how they come down? This makes it sound so much more musical than if I were to just repeat the chords. And in fact, in a lot of music, you'd be surprised how often chords just repeat, but it sounds so musical because they were clearly picked to do things along the way. So they don't repeat in that they play the same notes, but they do play the same chords. So here I am doing some of that goodness right here, slowly edging things downward. And while that's going on, because I did a 5-1 here, this like da, da, one of those things, when we reach here, we expect a conclusion, and that allows me to slip the drums in, just like, here's some drums. And it fits really nicely. It's like, oh, I was introducing the next part. It's like a nice, smooth little handoff there. So the drums, I'm not really going to talk about the drums. They are incredibly simple. They're just a bunch of stemmed out samples, basically. And then during the drop, I just bring in the hats. So it's all this middle stuff. So I'm going to largely leave the drums out of it, but I bring those drums in and I leave out the high stuff because I just want the underlying groove, and that's it. And it's just more of the same, except for this time, I want to move into a much bigger thing upcoming, right? Because that's just my next goal. So I start adding in harmony right here, and I bring up the volume quite a bit on the Diva. So this synth, because of its responsiveness, makes it ideal for just crescendoing naturally. So that's what I end up doing here. And I went for a lot of minor thirds and whatnot, and a fifth. And let's just hear that. So that's just great. Beautiful. I do a little bit of a different phrase right here. And that's because phrases like this tend to stick out. And so I wanted to change it up. In fact, I might do that for this second part over here. But overall, I'm really happy with how this section turned out. And that's really all there was to it. Nothing too crazy. When we come over here, we've now reached the climax, and this is sort of where the theme comes in. And you'll also notice I am adjusting the filter movement to open up more when we get to this point. That way, when I get to this point, the filters also sort of just push us into the next section. And that's the first time the chords push down as a result of this motion. What is causing that clicking sound? The drums come in, and I also bring in the bass. So a lot happens right there, but it all pushes together, and it's like one idea. It's just a bunch of little ideas that form one big idea. So for the bass, I have a Harmor, and it's got some distortion with a heavy filter. That's the bass that I went with. And if we solo this, I could show you what it's doing. So that's all the bass does. And I believe it just loops on the next part too, but it just really underlines it. And what this allows to happen is there's a kick here, and then this comes in and responds to the kick. So we end up getting this beautiful relationship between the two. I also have these, like another diva that just has this spaced out pad that just comes in and out, and it was just a really nice touch. You'll come across these things as you go. So this wasn't something I sort of stumbled across it. So it was kind of just a nice plus, nice job. But that's the nature of the bass. And it's been filtered heavily so that it could stay out of the way of all the high stuff. There's no reason to have that high stuff in the bass. All this. Yeah, that would be really uncharacteristic, so. Now for the other elements to accomplish sort of the big goal I was going for, I bring the chords. They are much lower. And they also speed up. And over here we crescendo with those, which is what really helps at the end build to that climax. On the Diva, so the M power synth generally stays the same because it's just that bell sound. You can't do a ton with bell sounds. And so over here, I go ahead and I go a lot crazier. I add them in octaves and I make them significantly louder. So the filter's a lot more open at this point. And because we've been fiddling with the idea, the listener's gotten used to the sound. When it opens up, it seems like just the right thing to do. And then you see right there, there's a natural gap in the melody that allows the bass to push. And this is a good songwriting principle in general. You want to give room to other parts and allow them to speak to each other. So it's almost like, oh, we see that these two parts are indeed working together. They are not fighting each other. A really common thing to do is to just write it so that there's no rests anywhere in the music for any part. And then your music just sounds busy. It doesn't sound like it's one cohesive thing working together. And then here I wanted to wind up to an ending. There's that click again. I gotta figure out what's causing that. And the ending in this case, I just bring it up with some harmonies. So I just deviate from the path of octaves and let it rise up. And then along with that phrase, I allowed this filter to just grow massively. And I also do something else that you can't see on the surface, but it's there. And it's if I click over here, I actually set a max for this. So this is a really handy thing in FL that you can do with automation. So I had the shape that I want, but I didn't want the filter to open or close as much. And so you can actually limit the minimum and maximum these values can be, and that will change the filter. So for example, at the beginning, let's just open up this one and bring it all the way out down. So you see how much more, that's not okay. So that's why that's there, as opposed to going in and adjusting the physical curve itself. So that's a huge plus FL sort of enjoys over several other DAWs that don't have such tools. And if we come over here, I change it again. You notice I now bring up the minimum, and I also largely take off the cap on the max. So when we go lower, it's okay for the filter to be more expressive. And so that's a subtle thing that you wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at it. You'd actually have to go and inspect the curves. So these curves are actually a little different than what they look like. And it's a super, super handy way to deal with problems like this when you're moving around and you say, oh, I don't want the filter to open that much here. Well, you can just take those automation curves and change the min and max. Leave the other ones alone without having to go in and edit every single point. So that's a really, really nice feature to have. And that is largely it. And then at the end here, we simply recap it with just those three notes. If you ever find in a theme a really iconic thing like Jingle Bells, Jingle Bells, da 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 da, anything like that. Those are really, really powerful ideas because they're so simple and easy to remember. And so I chose to end with that sort of as a restatement. It adds a real sense of like we've accomplished something. Something occurred and there was a resolution, and now we are thinking back on it. It's just kind of a rewarding experience. Almost like you went on a journey and you're thinking about this great journey that you just went on. And that's our remix of Jingle Bells. Let's go over some of the main concepts here. So at the beginning, one trick that you might take away from this is the filter has a leaky low pass. And actually there's a filter called leaky low pass in here. Leg low pass, leaky low pass. And it just lets some high stuff through, but that serves to make sort of a grounding. It really helps establish an atmosphere, and it also adds a mellow tone, even though it's high frequencies that we're adding. And so that's one thing you could take away. You could consider screwing around with atmosphere like that. Another one that you could try is really, when you write down your chords, focusing on this voice leading idea and slowly building in, because we see this one picks up right where the other one left off. We have very clear bass motion. Things like that really translate to an easily communicated theme. And the song is easy to tell where it's going, so it's a little bit more enjoyable to listen to. You could, again, find a sound that's very expressive. Find one that specifically responds to dynamics very, very well. And try writing the most musical thing you possibly can with such a preset. If you have Diva, crack Diva open and mess around with the default. It's one of the best default presets because a lot of these synths start with default presets that are just saw waves because that's like the classic starting point for sound design. But having a synth that opens up with a preset that's just this nice is kind of a treat. And if you are an owner of FL, you could give a go at some of the more advanced features of the automation. So there's a couple concrete goals you could go for. Try messing around with the min and max and seeing some cool effects that you can get doing that. Pick something interesting to automate. If you don't know what you want to automate, because maybe it's just like so many knobs, overwhelming on whatever synth you pick, go for a filter. A filter is a great thing to just get started with. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Subscribe and hit that bell icon for future videos, and have a blessed day.